Mabuhay, everyone. This is Reverend Reg, and today is July 20, 2021, and it's actually 20 minutes past 8 o'clock in the morning here in Manila, Philippines. So today I'm very excited because I have someone from Ohio who's a colleague of mine, and he just started his online store in a metaphysical theme. So this is something that not a lot of people have access to. So I'm happy to share that he has this in that part of the globe. And today, just to give you a brief background of our guest, Dr. Rick Allen has a PhD, and he is from the circus. And actually, he came from an illusionist magician's background to what he now calls as a real magician. He also has a certificate as a master hypnotist. Rick Allen has 16 years stopping the crowds on carnival midways, persuasively selling them a deck of trick playing cards. He became interested in psychic and paranormal subjects at a very young age, and was influenced by his mother's interest in topics of unexplained phenomena. He became fascinated by his abilities as a carry pitchman as it related to persuasion, leading to combined interests. So, anyway, without further ado, let me bring to our broadcast Dr. Rick Allen. And let's
Hello,
give him
hello,
a round of
hello.
applause.
Quite a background I have.
Uh, and I want to greet you, Dr. Rick. Mabuhay. It's a Filipino word, and it actually means live and go beyond existing. And obviously, you're very much the type of person who has done it.
Yes,
Awesome. And, we're
definitely.
very excited to have you today because the amazing thing about you, you actually went from being an illusionist, as you've mentioned, into converting that magic into practical use. And
Yes.
before we proceed, I just want to invite everyone for a quick meditation. So let's gently close our eyes, connect your heart, feel as if your breaths are coming from the heart. Awesome. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. And I want us to reflect on a spiritual nugget from Reverend Shirley Lawson's book, The Golden Spiritual Nuggets. And I invite Dr. Rick to explain it further to us. And our audience also, this will get you thinking. Share with us whatever it is that you picked up from the nugget. So for Dr. Rick, I'm going to pick one. Transformation does not change the real self. Transformation happens when old thoughts are released, new thoughts are embraced, and the real you shines through.
Oh, that is perfect. Let me explain how I went from being a trickster illusionist into uh, finding the real magic in the world. And that fits so well because you have to transform. And all along the time that I was learning, I was very fortunate to have many mentors progressing through my path. And one of the biggest things that I always had in the back of my mind while I was doing just simple magical tricks was that there has to be more to this than
Mhm.
just the illusion. And along with my mother had a interest in the psychic and metaphysical world. There used to be a magazine that was published called Fate Magazine many, many years ago. And I would pick that up. She faithfully got it every month, and she would have it laying around. And I, as a child, 9, 10 years old, I started reading articles in it and asking questions and this type of thing. And all along the time that I had done the illusion work, which I still do,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I I kept feeling like there has to be more meaning to this than just doing tricks. And I was able to develop doing the tricks and the illusions and put messages with them so that I would
Mm-hmm.
capture attention with the illusions, and then I could deliver the message of what I felt was real magic in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you for
So
sharing
so I had to transform. So that fits that fits
that.
perfect.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Rick, because one of the things that happens to a lot of people, and I think not everybody is able to make the distinction, is that a lot of us are either growing our consciousness and having the awareness of that particular experience, that you're actually changing your belief systems, or you're tending to that particular foundation of whatever it is that's going to expand and grow in terms of ideas and what's going to happen next. But there are also other people who are laser focused in terms of growing their skills. And would you say that the magic tricks, in terms of being someone who's an expert at creating illusions, was it something that in the beginning was just you know you said it came to a point that you wanted more than just doing the technical aspect of creating magic? You
Right.
wanted to find a deeper meaning into it. So I want to ask you, from your experience, of course, you see a lot of people right now, they're doing their own thing, whatever that is. But for me, I notice the distinction when people are just growing their skill set,
Hmm.
but they're also not diving deep into their life philosophy, not asking themselves what's the purpose of what they're doing right now. So there comes a point when you can be so good at your technical skills, but you're also not feeling that level of inner fulfillment and inner expansion. And then later on, it creates so-called problems for you. Have you noticed that from your own
Yeah.
circles?
Oh, definitely. There are people who that I personally know that I mean I'm not a young man anymore, and there are people that I've known for decades that, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, they have they're basically on the same level that they were 20, 30 years ago. They haven't grown any, they haven't changed any, and that's a sad situation. I'm a
Mhm.
lifelong learner, obviously, with what I do, and I'm very eclectic in my interest and all of the various, because everything fascinates me.
Mhm.
Uh, Everything in this wonderful universe of ours fascinates me, and
Beautiful.
I'm very inquisitive, and it is sad for people who feel that by the time they're 20, 21 years old or so, that they know everything, and they haven't even begun yet.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
yet they're not open to the learning process. And life itself is it's a journey. We're only here for a short amount of time, and in that time, that's our I believe that that's what our purpose is for being here, is to learn. So
Yes.
I tried to take full advantage of that, and I
Thank you
want
for
other people to.
yeah. And that's really amazing, Dr. Rick. And honestly, it's one of the things that I love about our circle in University
Hmm.
of Metaphysics. because it's really inspiring on my part to be surrounded by people who are constantly growing themselves and constantly challenging what they already know.
Yes.
It's so beautiful to be surrounded by people like that, because I also noticed, after having done several interviews in many different uh, for many different countries and for many
Hmm.
different cultures, I noticed that the most progressive ones are countries that have people who have at least two college degrees for some reason. And because of that expansion of their perspective, their consciousness,
Right.
they're able to adjust a lot easier when they're not just growing their skill set, but they're also growing their perspective in life. I see that after having done so many interviews, that it plays a big role as to why their country is also very progressive. It's
Right.
just it's just my personal observation. And I had to bring that up because, like what you mentioned, you may be 10, 20 years in terms of, let's say, you have a skill set right after your first college degree. But it doesn't end there, because what happens is, if that's the only thing that you know, so many things will happen in life that will push you to grow your emotional aspect as well.
Oh yes, yes, yes. I did not get my doctorate until I was uh, uh, what was I 60 or 61 years old. So it was a lifetime accumulation, and I'm still learning. I still take courses, and I still am reading constantly. Across from me here in my office is my library, so to speak, and it has well over 1,000 books. And then I have another side room that also has kind of an overflow, and then I have all throughout my home, I have stacks of books that I haven't read yet. so
Amazing.
so it's a learning thing, and it's a shame that in today's world, with the internet and the ability to do things online, that people aren't more inquisitive than what they are. And
Mhm.
that's what I think you have to have. I think it all starts with you just being motivated and inquisitive. In fact, I have something that I'm going to offer your guests later, um,
Mhm.
as far as the being motivated to learn. So um, it's interesting that I chose that gift, because that was it's very appropriate for what we're talking about.
Awesome. I love that, Dr. Rick, because I noticed as well that it's not enough that you're just studying and studying as well. If you have technical skills and you have that right philosophy about life, that life is an evolutionary process which will cause you to learn, grow, observe, and ponder things in your quiet space. It's a very powerful combination put
Yes.
together. And at the same time, I want to share something with you because I learned something from Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, Crystal. I was listening to them yesterday, and one of the things that they were both saying, a lot of people, they don't live the kind of life that will fulfill them because they reach a certain age where they lose their curiosity in life, where they lose their sense of innocence and their sense of personal discovery every day, that sense of wanting to experience life more on a different level. So it's it just resonates with what you said. And I'm very sure that when you mentioned about the internet, which is supposed to be something that's going to make us more information driven in terms of discovering it, because there's so much to discover right now and so many online courses
Oh,
available. It's just
yes.
one of those things that anybody has the opportunity to actually create or curate the life that they want, especially I noticed that for a lot of big companies like Facebook and Google, they even offer some of their practical courses for free.
Oh
And
yes, yeah, yes. There's so much free information out there that really you would not have to pay for anything. So finances should not be an obstacle as long as you have the ability to have an internet connection. And you even I have a friend that it amazes me because she uses her phone. She does not have a notebook or a desktop computer or anything, and she just uses her phone. And you'll mention something to her, and she's on her phone putting in and giving you the information right then and there. So it's not an obstacle to learn anymore. It's just a matter of making your mind up that you're going to do it. And you can always find time. When I originally, I went to a brick and mortar college to start with, and back then you had to show up in the classroom at a specific time, and the class was held. You had to turn in your work at a specific time. And now with online, like with the University of Metaphysics, um, it's you can do it at your leisure. There were many times when I was working on my dissertation, and it was literally middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm working on it and turning in my work.
oh,
You wouldn't be able to do that 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so the internet to me is a marvelous thing. It's not without its downfalls as well, but it's a marvelous tool to use, particularly for education. And you can find anything. All you have to do is just search it, and you can find anything. I spend many hours going down what I call rabbit holes, in that I'll start looking for one thing that will lead. That is why I'm so eclectic, because one thing leads to another. Then I become interested in that. I study that. That leads to something else. I've done this my entire life. So uh, learning to me is just second nature. But for a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't expand on their education. So uh, now that's here. Now I realize in a lot of other countries that is probably different, but here in the United States, young people are basically lazy. They want everything just instantly handed to them. So that's my opinion, but that's that's
really, uh,
that's how I look at it.
but actually, it's amazing that you brought it up, Dr. Rick, because honestly, I pick up a lot of my work ethic, inspiration, and that desire to learn and grow some more because of a lot of American authors,
Hmm.
thought
Hmm.
leaders, and business owners. And in fact, one of them is the owner of Starbucks, Howard. And
Uh-huh.
we know that he had very humble beginnings. He was the first one who went to college in his family. And something like that really does inspire me to, because if you really think about it, it has a lot to do with knowing what you really want in life, having the discipline to actually do everything to make it happen. And at the same time, just allowing for other things to flow. Because on one of the interviews that I was listening to him about, he was saying that, there's great opportunity, but the work ethic has to be there. And of course, when the work ethic is in place, laziness has
Hmm.
no place in
Right.
someone who has a very big vision. So, anyway, my follow up question, Dr. Rick, for you is that was there anyone, teacher or specific person that really inspired you to do what you're doing right now?
I have had many mentors. I've been very fortunate. I don't know that it was particularly by accident, but I have had many people pass through my life that have changed my life, have taught me different aspects of life. When I first started out and I was uh, uh, 15 years old, the gentleman who owned the magic shop where I lived, the trick magic shop, um, was also a hypnotist,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I became interested in hypnosis. Then he also was knew quite a bit about psychic subjects, and he actually did card readings and that type of thing. And he was one of the few people that I know that actually did crystal ball readings. You always see a lot of people with crystal balls, but it seems like not very many people know how to use them correctly. And so I would say he was probably my first mentor, because he pretty well kind of took me under his wing, and uh, taught me the magical skills that I needed to know, the illusionary skills that I needed to know. But he would throw in these other little tidbits because he knew that I would follow them up and go to the library and look it up, and that type of thing. So I was very fortunate to have that. And uh, there was another gentleman that came into my life a couple 3 years later that also was a teacher. Him and his wife were just marvelous people. They they taught me uh, how to, which is very important. And if you're in the entertainment business professionally, they taught me the skills of how to live on the road. Um, Most people just think that you just go out and just do it, but you have to know about hotels, how to treat people, what to do, and all of that. So they taught me most all of that. So over the years, it's just been a progression of people who have come into my life, gone out of my life. They've taught me lessons, and then when I've been fulfilled, they either myself or they move on. In my case, most of them have passed away. Um, they're still there, but they have passed away. And so as I go through life, there are people that just come into my life, and but you have to be open to that. You have to you you have to listen with your ears and keep your mouth shut. So if you talk constantly, then you're not listening. You can't talk and listen at the same time. So
Yes. Awesome. And did you always have that kind of attitude where you're always just listening? Because it's not easy to develop. Like Tony Robbins, for example, I remember one of his teachers was Jim Rohn,
I love Jim Rohn. Yeah.
and then he was saying to Jim Rohn one time that I'm doing all this work, but I'm not making progress with the results that we're aiming for. Why is that? And then Jim Rohn called his attention about him not reading every day. So that was one of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
loved about what he shared, because that began his passion for learning every day. So were you always like that, Dr. Rick? Were you always listening, or was it something that was developed in you over time?
No, I think I've always been a listener. The few times that I haven't listened and talked instead were mistakes. So I learned I learned to listen, and I'm a big believer in having when I say a mobile library. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm
Um,
not familiar.
okay, a mobile library is when you're in your car driving around, just doing simple running errands, or whatever, or even if you don't drive, if whatever your form of transportation is. Now with MP3s, you can just stick in a set of earbuds and listen anywhere. but you convert that time that you normally would be driving into listening to people like Jim Rohn and Anthony Robbins and all of the great teachers. You mentioned Mark Victor Hansen earlier. These are all the people that I grew up listening to
Oh,
on cassette tapes and records before that.
yeah. Wow, that's a really long time. That's a really long time, but it's amazing that you actually had that kind of attitude already because it's not easy. Most people actually they get into the space where life has to hit them really hard before they actually grow into that realization. Hey, you have to pay attention and listen. And Dr. Rick, one of the things that was really amazing to me for quite a long time, I would work so hard, bought a lot of prosperity or success books. And that particular level of enthusiasm that I had, it wasn't at par with the kind of results that I was making. So it came to the point when I considered myself an exhausted success enthusiast. Did you ever reach that part in your life where you felt that you were exerting yourself and it wasn't at par with the results that
Well,
you wanted?
yes. Let me back up just a moment because of something that you said. Uh, Make no mistake, I have been knocked off my horse many, many times in my life. It's not always been a lovely journey, let's say. But one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Winston Churchill, and the quote is "Never, never, never give up." And when you get knocked down, like this past year has been with the pandemic, when you get knocked down, you have to get back up, dust yourself off, get back on your horse, and keep going. Um, I will admit that the older I get, when I get knocked off, like this past year, it takes me a little longer to get up and to get going. But I am getting up and I am going. That's what pretty much led to the idea of the store that I have opened, or the metaphysical shop. And you just have to keep going. And yes, I think you reach, to directly answer your question, I think you reach a point where you can get success burnout. And you keep trying and trying, and it often does not meet your expectations. So I think it's natural to get a little discouraged. But I still listen to Jim Rohn. I was looking on my shelf to the side here. I thought I had a Jim Rohn CD I was going to pull out and show, but I don't see it right offhand without going over and digging. It's there somewhere, uh, but I have all of these success books within grasp over here, along with my metaphysical Bible dictionary and all of these help books that I grab for when I don't know something. I can look it up and see what it is or what it says, and that still happens today. And this is I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. This I can grab. This is it's a dictionary. It's a metaphysical
Awesome.
dictionary.
Is that the one of Charles Fillmore from Unity?
Yes, uh-huh. Yes,
Awesome. I have it.
yes. And it comes in handy all the time to look things up, because you can't know. Excuse me for going out of camera here. You can't. You just. It's impossible to know everything. There,
Yeah,
there's
that's true.
there's no one that knows everything, and that's why, as long as I'm mentally able, up till I take my last breath, I will be learning something, and I actually hope after I take my last breath that I'll continue learning. So a little bit of philosophy there.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Rick. Because, here in the Philippines, I also have a mentor, and he was saying that we have to be comfortable talking about death, not because you're wanting attention that
Hmm.
you're talking about it, but because it's just a fact of life that you have to prepare for. And if you already have perfect clarity about what you want to do in this lifetime and how you want to prepare for you passing on to the next dimension, life gets easier to handle. And that's why I love what you mentioned about you being mentally, uh, just ready to take on anything until your last breath,
Right.
because it's so different when people don't have the awareness that you need to constantly nourish your mental muscle.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, Dr. Rick, Dr. Ro Guzman is watching all the way from the Philippines. Stand by, Dr. Ro, because we're gonna have something later from Dr. Rick. And anyway, Dr. Rick, one of the things that fascinate me, because alongside Jim Rohn, another teacher that I love talking about as well is Brian Tracy. I love his books on self
Hmm.
discipline and work ethic, how you manage your time, and all those things, Dr. Rick. How are you able to put them together? I want to ask a follow up question to that, because you have 1,000 books. I'm also a voracious reader myself. And then it doesn't really make you invulnerable to experiencing challenges in life. Because as far as you're concerned, you're reading all these books because you want to be ready for anything that life throws at you. And hopefully, when you read or you prepare for something, you're preparing for your success. But sometimes it feels like you're preparing for a victory because you didn't see a challenge, coming your
Right.
way.
Hmm.
So, what do you make of it, especially for a man who has 1,000 books?
Well, sounds like a movie title. Um, well, first of all, my books, the books that I have for the most part, found me. I did not find them. Uh, I was either just in a bookstore and they uh, popped out at me. A lot of books that I have to be honest with you, I fell in love with the title of it more so than the content in it, and those offer inspiration as well. So because I can just gaze across here and see the titles on the spines of the books, and that's inspirational to me. But as far as the books, I'm not sure that I fully understand what you're asking. But the way that I do with books is that I will pull just one or two, maybe small little bits out of them, and that sticks with me. So a large book does not necessarily, the size of the book does not tell me what the learning power of that book is. I can read just maybe one sentence in an entire book of 300 or 400 pages, and it made it worthwhile for me to have that information. Also, with having that, as much information as I can have consumed in my lifetime, um, I I do not retain a lot of things for a long period of time. I I use them while it's of interest to me or in my mind, um, but I'm not a walking encyclopedia. I guess is what I'm trying to get at. I will read about something, and if it's not something that I use on a daily basis, I I think it's probably still there, but I shove it to the back of my subconscious to where I'm not thinking about it. I don't know if that answers your question of what you were actually asking or not.
Yeah.
But
All right. Let me clarify that. For example, I also buy a lot of books and I pay for a lot of personal growth and development courses.
Hmm.
And then, I'm also willing to take action in terms of what I need to execute, at least at the level of my understanding at that time.
Hmm.
And then, to me, there was that feeling of, if I was studying so much about all these things and I was taking the necessary action as I felt I should in order to match what I wanted to demonstrate, how come I'm not really getting the results that I want? Is there anything that I need to adjust? What's lacking? So, did you ever reach that point where you feel that you wanted something and then it wasn't a match to what you felt that you have prepared for, especially in terms of learning and reading about it?
My attitude with that is that it wasn't either meant to be, or it was information that I really did not need at that time. I have had things that I've studied that at the time I thought, well, this doesn't make any sense, or this is nonsense, or however, I just didn't get anything from it, or very little from it. And then years later, this is why I don't discard the books. There will probably come a time where I need to do that, but uh, I never know when that is going to need to cross my mind again. So as long as I've got the information there, I can always go back and pull it out and look at it. So as far as reaching success, though, uh, I don't. I honestly don't believe that everybody is meant to be highly successful.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
think many people, uh, for whatever reason, just it's not in their design to be successful. Whether they wouldn't know what to do with it or what not to do with it, I don't know. There's many aspects of my life of things that I have been involved in that have turned out not to be successful. So I basically know when to put an end to that and move on. Uh,
mm-hmm.
it's not always easy to do, but if you have a real passion for something, you're going to be directed for it. A lot of people have what they think are passions that aren't. Once again, in my opinion, I think they want to do things that they really um, like with the like with as you call real magic. When I talk to illusionary magicians, and they say, "Yeah, I'd like to be able to do that or learn that," and I think their motive is not to learn to enhance their well-being. They think it's some magical power that, oh, if I had that magical power, then I would be the world's greatest illusionist.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense of what I'm?
Yeah.
So they're misusing. I don't know that they're misusing, but they're misunderstanding what
Mm-hmm.
it is that it's all about. Um,
Yes.
so and it doesn't hurt to have a good. I'm kind of being called to say this. I don't know particularly why, because it doesn't particularly fit the situation, but it doesn't hurt to have a good healthy dose of skepticism
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
as well. um, you may go into something thinking, well, there's nothing to this. There's a lot of areas of metaphysical subjects that I'm not real sure about. um, there's more questions than there are answers for me about it, but I try to keep an open mind, and I listen to other people. That listening factor of listening
Yes.
to other people, because you never know when somebody is going to say something to you that's going to change your thinking about something, and it can happen instantly. Maybe that's the real magic
Mm-hmm.
in those things. So
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Rick. It's such a powerful thing to hear, listening and it can be the real magic. And something that I also want to add to that, because I felt that in the past, when I was aiming for material success, because when you're young, you want to make something out of what all the things that you studied for
Hmm.
and all the part-time work that I did. I was working and studying at the same time, so I wanted to make something out of it. But one of the biggest realizations that I had, having a metaphysical perspective about success, if you're not feeling successful internally, it will be very difficult for you to demonstrate success in the material
Oh,
plane.
I agree with that 100%. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, and I also, I think, we talked earlier a little bit about mentors. I think it's important to have at least one. Well, you don't have to restrict it to just one mentor, as long as they're not conflicting in what they're telling you. You can have many mentors, um, and our online group that we have with the University of Metaphysics is nice because it's an online support group for us. If you have questions, answer uh, you can get answers for the questions that you have, and sometimes it's interesting to see the different answers that you get. So there are some very wise people on that, within that group, and uh, I enjoy looking at their answers a lot of times.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Rick. And actually, I want to highlight on what you said. Maybe listening is the real magic. And Dr. Rick, Dr. Masters, the founder of University of Sedona, always talks about the God power within. Now, there are a lot of people who are actually opposed to the idea of having mentors because they feel strongly about just focusing on the God within. But I think it wasn't really thoroughly explained, because I agree with you to open your mind and be receptive to the concept of mentors. But for some people, they're very rigid about understanding that the information can only come from within them. What's
Mm-hmm.
your take on it, Dr. Rick?
Well, first off, I think I believe that there's no one answer. My personal belief is that I believe that the higher power, uh, which I refer to as universal energy, everyone has a different concept of that as well. I feel that these people who become mentors are directed by that higher power to you. Um, very little. My concept is that very little that happens, if anything, in this universe, is just by happenstance or accident. It's all designed. People come into your life. Situations come into your life. They're
Mhm.
all learning experiences, and if you look much into reincarnation, that pretty well is the theory of reincarnation, is that each time you're reincarnated, you're sent here to learn a lesson that you didn't learn in another life. So how are you going to learn that without having people come through your life to teach you? So I pretty well believe that people that come into your life, that it's not good and bad, that they come into your life not by accident but on purpose, and they're here to teach you something. And what they may have to teach you may not be what you feel is a positive lesson, but it's a lesson
Mhm.
nonetheless. So
And Dr. Rick, I also feel that if learning and growing is really your priority, you have less attachment to being right all the time.
right. Well, yes. I'm definitely not right most of the
For
and
some,
I'm always welcome to other, to other, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
That is by listening to other people. If there's one thing that has come out of this, that would be the theme of this talk is listen, listen. It may not always be
Mhm.
what you want to hear, but listen. So,
Yeah.
um,
I also want to ask you, Dr. Rick, what about, because we talked about reading and we talked about listening and then weighing things in for answers, how people's diverse opinions can actually, help you grow a lot faster because you're learning from a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of people have also read a lot about a particular subject, and you're there like an innocent bystander gathering all these information. So one of the things that I want to add to that, Dr. Rick, what for you is your framework into putting things together in terms of formulating your opinion? Because we know in University of Metaphysics discussion groups, we have a lot of thought-provoking posts. Sometimes it
yes.
triggers me. I have to be honest. But then I take a pause because when you take a pause and take your ego out of the way, then you realize as well there are some things there that's really helping you sharpen your perspective in terms of a particular subject. So what to you is your framework? Because one of the things that I learned last week from someone, she said, of course, I love Dr. Masters in terms of metaphysics, but when it comes to the subject of nutrition, I don't think that's his expertise. So I'm going to have to look for another perspective in terms of that.
Mhm.
So for you, what's your perspective on how do you formulate your framework when it comes to accepting a particular opinion as valuable to you?
That's a tough question. Um, I go. I go basically with my internal feeling about something. I I meditate quite a bit, and when I do, answers will come to me of that that feels right or that does not feel right. So as far as an actual structure, I don't know that I have a formula per se. Um, I because I question a lot of things, and that's why I said having a good dose of skepticism I don't think is a bad thing because it can cause you to look into it further. But
Yes.
there's some things that I just feel that I hear or someone will say, and I just have that internal feeling, which is that energy within me, that higher God power within me, telling me, no, that you need to look at this a little differently, or this. I mean, yeah, no matter what you do, there are people out there who going using a term from my illusionary world. There are people, intentional or not, who are deceptive in what they say in order not to
Mm-mm.
sound uneducated or not unknowledgeable, I guess, about something. They will just basically say something just to
Mm.
the talking rather than listening part. So that's a tough question, though.
Thank you for sharing that,
What?
Dr. Rick, because I had to ask that question because especially we know that we make decisions every day. And something that I learned from Jeff Bezos, he attributes most of his success in business because he said he only makes 3 decisions per day and he has a cutoff time. So he says that before 11 a.m., he gathers all the most important things that he needs to make a decision on. And he said, although he has made a lot of mistakes along the way into growing Amazon as a company, as to where it is today, how big it is today, how influential it is today, he said it's because of that three decisions that he makes every day that he's very careful about, and the timing as to how he makes those decisions. Because we know, I love your answer because you said, although sometimes it sounds so good, but if it doesn't feel right in the heart,
Right. Right.
uh, you don't you don't actually just make the decision based on how good it sounds, but on how good it feels. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes. I would say I've had several situations in my life. They were all entertainment based. Well, one of them wasn't, but I won't go discuss that. But they were to do with the with my experience in the entertainment business, and I was offered what appeared to be uh, a very good proposition, but I didn't feel right about it.
Mm,
And I, number one, if someone needs an answer immediately and you say you want to think about it, then I would avoid that person because you need time to get that feeling. It may hit you instantly, but sometimes you have to think about it a little bit and meditate on it. But
awesome.
these decisions I chose not to go with, and it wasn't particularly that they were bad decisions, but they would have altered my life to where it would have taken me into a totally different direction. And quite honestly, we would not be here talking now, um, because I would be off in a totally different realm other than this. And I felt that I was being pulled to do what I'm doing now, and
Mm,
I think ultimately it was the right decision. Although I didn't feel that way at the time, I thought, I should have done that. I could have been rich. I could have been have a great amount of fame probably, but I didn't go that route. So, and I think I'm a better person for that. But also, I think that the people that I have touched along the way, uh, uh, I've changed their lives as well. So, which is something that gives me a great deal of peace to know that I can teach somebody something and pass on what I've learned. So,
yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Rick. I want to add something to what you said because I was attending a spiritual class, and one of the things that the teacher was saying, you can approach your life in two different ways. One is you go to that space where it takes some time for you to make a decision. And the other thing is you decide immediately and take all the necessary steps to move forward. And because you keep moving forward, even if you keep making mistakes, because you make mistake fast, you also learn fast and you also move forward fast. So
fail fast forward, fail forward fast.
yeah. And he was saying, whatever you do, it's always going to have consequences. But the thing is, what can you endure in those two approaches in life? So, for example, there was someone talking to me the other day, and she was saying, you're doing so many things at so many simultaneously right now. And then I was telling her, a lot of people think I'm doing so many things, but I made a decision early on to live a purposeful, minimalist lifestyle.
Mhm.
So I have very few clutter in my space because one of the things that I adapted from Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg is that they have less clutter in their space. So when they have to make that decision fast, they don't go through what we call decision fatigue. And they also don't miss out on important opportunities. And for me, it has worked very well. So, what can you say about it, Dr. Rick? Because personally, for me, I've been clearing clutter since I was 19 years old, and it has helped me a lot.
I'm not one to talk about clutter. If you remember earlier, I mentioned stacks of books sitting
Yeah.
around. I no, I think you're correct uh, in that you can make decisions faster, but more so, I I think when it comes to a decision making process, you just have to go with that inner feeling, and I don't know that um, has much to do with your surroundings because it's all inside. It's just it's that um, they used to call it a gut feeling. I don't think that's quite what the appropriate way to describe it. But you just, at least in my situation, I just usually know. And the older I've gotten, the quicker I can make a decision about something. Sometimes I do need to put it off and not make a quick decision about something. But most generally anymore, and I don't know if that's just come with being older is wiser or what, but I still I go with that internal feeling. But it seems like it comes much quicker than what it used to. So I don't know if it's just
Yeah.
something that I've learned, uh, at my age, I'm getting to where I can't take too long to think about things. So,
All right. Anyway, Dr. Rick, let me just share our Facebook feed. I noticed that I wasn't able to do it. So anyway, I'm sharing it because I'm excited about what we're talking about, especially you wanted to share something about your store. Dr. Ro is watching in the Philippines. She's one of our most discerning viewers here in perspective because when I guest people on the show and then I get feedback from my guests, and then a lot of them tell me they get smarter after the show because we're talking about a lot of things about how you make decisions, how do you sharpen your mind. And something that I wanted to share, Dr. Rick, about the space thing, because when I was studying feng shui, one of the things that I learned was that whatever is happening internally is also manifested in you externally. And if you're going to ask me, you having 1,000 books is not a clutter because as a metaphysician, you need to have resources. And it just so happened that you have already built a library of resources. But what I'm saying is, there are so many things in life. For example, a lot of people have so many things, but they're not functional.
right.
And if it's not functional, then it's a clutter. Even if you think that it's still okay and you might use it in the future, a lot of people have that difficulty of releasing things. But to me, one of the things that I love about it is that the circulation of energy is just freely flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's freely flowing, it's a lot easier to feel whole, well being, and grounded, and staying in that neutral state of mind. Because I think in making decisions, having that neutral state of mind and being centered in your heart are two important things to consider,
Mm-hmm.
and not feeling that you're not feeling rushed into making a decision. What do you think about it?
I would agree. I think having I agree with the energy part most definitely. That the more room, the more space, the more space that is. First of all, I know very little about feng shui,
Mhm.
so I can't talk much of anything about it. But I do know that if you have an open space, the more open the space is, the easier the energy can flow in that space. So, um, like where I'm at here in my office, this is it's I'm in a very tight space here. because of the way that I logistically I have to be, and I feel uh, my energy is not quite as high as what it
Mm.
would normally be when I don't have the microphone here and I don't have the lights on and all of that. So um, I agree with you. I'm glad you think that my books are not clutter. I sometimes think that they are. So, um, but you're right. You know, it's information that I pull from because I don't retain everything like I talked about earlier. So I may know something about a subject, but if I'm not using it, I need to have that reference material. And I'm old enough. You got to remember, you're talking to an old guy, and you're you know I know I lived with no computers, no cell phones, no a book was all that existed. Uh, it was a marvelous day. I mentioned cassette tapes and records. It was a marvelous day when I realized that I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Nightingale Conant or not, but they put
Mm.
out a lot of motivational material, and I found that at my local free library. And they had quite a few of the cassette tapes, and I fell in love with cassette tapes. And I thought, wow, you
Awesome.
can get this whole, so that added to it as well. I have often this one overflow room that I talked about. I have probably 50 or 60 Nightingale cassette, cassette tapes, albums, big albums of tapes. There's 8 to 12 tapes in an album.
Mhm,
So,
mhm. You know, Dr. Rick, I'm not sure if your space is open for to welcome visitors, but it just crossed my mind and I feel called to share this with you. If I have that kind of collection, I
mm-hmm,
would organize an activity in my space and invite everyone to come over.
mm-hmm.
Maybe share some meal and then just listen to those old
And
records.
we'll listen to them. Yeah, that would be that. That's a thought.
Yeah, because it's still so different. You know, the vibration that they have, it's very nostalgic.
Mhm.
It's almost like going to an art gallery or a museum for it.
I don't know. I love my MP3s now.
But it's just amazing that you have
That
that.
entire shelf will fit on one M3 MP3 player. So I can put it on a thumb drive and have everything just which is a marvel to me that you can do that. So
Yeah, because it's funny that you brought it up. I've interviewed Dr. Cindy Palos, who we both know is a DJ,
mhm,
and my boss in the radio before. They both came at the time when radio still had these cassette tapes and the what do you call the what do you call that thing? It's very
turntables,
yeah, those
turntables. Yeah.
turntables, and they said that they started on that level when radio had to use those, and just like what you said, right now it's all mp3s, but for me it's always nice to just reflect on how far we have evolved. And one of the things that is really something that stuck with me over time is that if you look at every industry has actually evolved. And I want to ask you, as a magician, as an illusionist, what do you think has evolved in magic over the years?
um, from an illusionary standpoint, um, there are not near as many venues as there used to be to perform in, um, and illusionary magic does not have the stature that it had when I was younger. Um, I started out doing uh, a large stage type show, And now most magicians, um, this fits into your theme of being minimalistic, because most magicians now, all they want to do are card tricks and small little what is termed close up effects that they can just do in their hands at a table for a few people. So that's primarily the market for that now. I I like a big crowd, so
Yeah,
so I
of
like
course.
performing. I like performing on stage and living the fantasy world that illusion creates with that. So.
Yeah, it's awesome that you actually talked about it because personally for me, when the lockdown happened, I noticed how incredibly different I felt when I was hanging out with people and I was just alone in the apartment. So it gave me a very weird feeling that
Hmm.
when the first time I went to the coffee shop after a very long period of lockdown, I almost wanted to tell the stranger I missed you.
Yeah.
And the idea of gathering together, just watching someone, I've always loved watching my teachers if they're teaching Kundalini yoga or they're just doing something of their own. Because there's something about people gathering together that makes you feel good. I think I'm a balance of someone who's an introvert and an extrovert because I also get a lot of energy refueled when someone facilitates an activity like what you mentioned.
Hmm.
I think I'm pretty old school in such a way that I love having the physical books and I still love listening to a lot of older people. Something like that is just very appealing to me. So, in fact, a lot of my books as well, they come from metaphysicians of 50 years ago.
Hmm.
So, something about it brings that feeling of just feeling good. It's like comfort food to me in that atmosphere.
Yes, there's nothing like a live conference to bring the energy to fill energy in a room. I think that's part of a large part of it for me is
Mhm.
the energy of a lot of people in a room. The just the power of the energy is just really awesome to me. Uh,
Yes.
where you don't, I just, I mean, it's fine. I mean, there are sleight of hand magicians now that just do things that quite honestly blow me away. I have no idea how they're doing what they're doing, and I'll be the
Amazing.
first to admit that. But appearing just for a few people at a table just does not have the energy for me that I need
Mhm.
to make it fun and interesting for me, and certainly not. I did not get into the whole doing stuff on Zoom and all of that because it just I there's just not an energy there
Mhm.
that you have with a live interactive event. So
Yes,
you
it's
know,
true.
so, um, one of my hopes is that the next conference in Sedona, I'm hoping to be able to go to it and be there for that because that has to be that has to be an experience, not only the conference itself, but the fact that it's in Sedona. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
so
true. And actually, Dr. Rick, something that I also want to share with you, I'm even organizing right now an online convention. I don't know if it's appealing to you, but one of the people who will be performing is a friend of mine who performs at Buckingham Palace. She's a very powerful, amazing performer, and I'm happy to share that with
oh,
everyone because,
uh-huh.
we're talking about balancing people, planet, and profit because we know that whatever happened during the pandemic, there was an imbalance.
Oh,
So
definitely, yes.
we want to know how we can best move forward with
It's
it. And
still, yeah, it still is pretty imbalanced,
mhm,
and the the imbalance here in the United States is definitely affecting people in a negative way. Um, um, I won't get into all of that, but I mean I'm attributing it to really bad negative energy, and I think everybody that's a believer in positive energy, I encourage them to spread that energy and constantly tell people that that they're loved, and that they're
mhm,
that they have a purpose and they're wanted, because there's so much negativeness in the world right now, and particularly I feel in this country. So
mhm.
this is a great country, but we need to get our act together. So
Yeah.
that's all I'll
And
say on that.
and for me, actually, I'm very grateful because ever since I was young, and even up to now in my adult life, I meet so many uh, kind Americans, and at the same time, I've been inspired so much about their work ethic and their passion to grow and learn some more. So I draw a lot of inspiration from so many authors that I have of the United States. So
Right.
that's
Well,
something that is.
there. I mean, there are a lot of great people here, and they are they are keeping it together. I think as
Mhm,
much as we're able to keep things together right now. But the pandemic just literally turned everything just on its head, and
yeah.
it changed a lot of lives, and a lot of perspectives that people had, and all of that. So there's a lot of negativeness that I think we need to overcome. But by being positive, I think we can do that if we all work together at it,
Hmm.
and keep
Yeah.
building the positive rather than the negative. There's two parts to the energy. I mean, to the energy. There's negative energy and there's positive energy. And right now, I it's not as bad as it was, I don't think, but the negative energy is larger than the positive right now. So
Hmm.
we need to push the positive to push the negative back. If that makes Does that make sense to what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because it
So
reminds me of the Marvel movies. and
yeah, I get, yeah. Okay. I can see
and
that.
yeah, because I watch movies as much as I read books. So when you think about metaphysics, a lot of the powers that we keep talking about, and then I watch Marvel and DC movies.
There's a lot of lessons in those.
Yeah.
I feel that there's lessons in those. Um, yeah, I mean, I think going back even to the days of Stan Lee and the the comic books, the printed comic books of my era, there were lessons in there as well. So
Yeah.
they weren't just comic books. so
Yes. And it's such an
so
amazing thing to just, put some entertainment because we can't be serious all the time. You need to strike a balance between preparing for work, but at the same time, keeping your sense of humor and magic and mysticism alive.
well,
Keep it.
I think that's very important, and
Mhm,
as you have probably realized while we're talking, I don't take I don't take life real seriously. Um, a lot of people think, oh, well, he's all into meditation, so he's like a monk that goes around and is and spouts off these wise sayings, and I may spout off things, but I don't know how wise they always are. But we
Yeah.
have to laugh. If we lose our sense of humor, then we've lost everything. So
Yeah, of
you
course.
know, so
Especially Dr. Rick, you mentioned that you've been through a lot in life, and I can't think of anything else more effective to heal someone's feeling of disappointment or depression, if not for laughter, because it's really.
I've had to laugh a lot. I've had two near death experiences in my life. Um, I've had quite a few financial catastrophes in my life. Um, but I've had a lot of good things too, and I concentrate on the good things and
Mhm.
not the negative things. Um, when at least the last time when I was in the hospital with this has been a few years ago now. They quite frankly said that I may not come out of it once I went into surgery, and they were very upfront about it. And I remember the one of the nurses making a comment, "Well, boy, you're sure taking this well for most most people are basket cases, when they're
Mhm.
told something like that." And I said, "Well, that's I don't want to die. I feel like I have more things to do here, but if that's my life, then that's my
Mhm.
life." So, and uh, and I find humor in strange places sometimes. There's
Mhm. Mhm.
there's humor everywhere. So that's, I guess, part of the entertainer in me. But um, and oddly enough, I also feel that I'm an introvert as well.
Mhm.
I Even though I am kind of on when I'm doing an interview like this or performing and everything, in my private life I'm kind of quiet. So that's when I go
Okay.
around. That's when I go around like a monk, and
Yes.
I say wise sayings to myself.
Awesome. That's great. That's great, Dr. Rick. And anyway, I want to go move on to the portion where you have actually a gift for our audience. So, what do you
Yes,
want us to do?
I talked earlier about motivation. That was early on, about being motivated to continue learning, and I'm a big proponent, obviously, of learning. So I have for your guests today. It's nighttime here, so I keep saying this evening. I I have a gift that I want to give them, and it's my motivational workshop that I have,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's recorded, and so they can watch and listen to it. There's a book that comes with it, and it's a complete course on becoming motivated. So if you're having trouble being motivated or know someone that needs motivation, of course, I suggest that you get it and listen to it whether you think you're motivated or not, because you'll become more motivated. But it's absolutely free. It's 190 something dollar value. So I'm giving it to your guest here this evening, and I think we have a link. Yes, you have it up there. Just go to tinyurl.com / Reverend Reg Gift, and if you'll type that in, that should take you to a little page. And if you'll give me your uh, name and where you want it sent to, you'll get an instant download on that. And I think it'll be worthwhile for you to pick it up take a look. And it gives you a little bit more of me, so you kind of see what I'm like in a teaching mode rather than just a talking mode. so, so
Yeah.
we have that, and also uh, going back to the pandemic. Um, During the I normally have a traveling metaphysical shop. I do not have a store per se, but we set up at various events, um, where you can pick up metaphysical supplies, jewelry, gift items, things like that. Well, during the pandemic, with everything being shut down, we weren't able to do that. So I started out on what I thought was going to be a simple task of putting an online store up. And after months and months of dealing with it, I gave up. And sometimes you have to go to someone else. And I
Mhm.
gave up and turned it over to somebody else to put together. And uh, they made me feel really stupid, and, but I
Mhm.
but I have an online store now, uh,
Wow,
that uh,
congratulations.
that my partner and I run, and it has over 4,000 different metaphysical and gift items on it. Um, uh, we came up with what I thought was kind of a clever little name, and we call it Indigo, as
Mhm.
in the color, Indigo Elephant gifts.com. And I think you have a link for that also somewhere. And if you go there, check us out. Um, if you do decide you want to purchase something, and you spend $24.99, which is a weird amount, but that's how the shopping cart sets it up, you will get free shipping on that. So that will save you quite a bit on that alone. So I would appreciate it if you would kind of go there and just take a look at it and um, uh, see what we have. We have just well with 4,000 items. We have
Awesome.
everything from sage to crystals to uh, 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 everything. Just everything that you can think of. Singing bowls. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head a few of the things that I know that are there. But uh, so it's that was an exciting accomplishment. So now we're well on our way, and we're finally getting back to where some of the vendor events are opening up, so we can have our traveling shop. But this gives a lot of options for, because obviously we can't carry as much in an in-person setting as we can with the store. So you go there, and surprisingly enough, I have books and books. So on just about every
Yes.
subject you can think of. So
Awesome. That's
so
amazing. And that's a lot of work. So congratulations to you.
thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm kind of proud of it. It took a lot of spinning wheels on my part of. Um, uh, if you go kind of do a replay of some of the things that we talked here about, you'll know my philosophy of I was doing more talking than listening, and I should have just listened and had someone do it from the start, and we would have had it up much sooner than what we did. But I was stubborn, so that was a lesson learned. So because they made it so easy, they just so,
I had fun talking to you, especially we both read a lot about certain thought leaders.
mhm.
And it's not always that you're able to talk to someone where you're reading the very same authors.
I have, and I would say anyone that doesn't know of Jim Rohn, he's probably my favorite of the, um, shall we say, old time speakers. Um, he's he's
Mhm.
humorous. He says a lot of humorous things, but he has a way of explaining things and getting the point across very clearly and very easily. And uh, it was a sad day when we lost Mr. Roan, uh, but he still is here because he put all this effort into having all of his knowledge transferred
Mm.
into recordings, and we can still learn from him to this day, and
Yes.
hopefully for many many days to come. But there's so many great people out there. That's why I'm a forever learner. So
Yes. Thank you for sharing all of that, Dr. Rick. And I want to ask you because, we talked so much about so many different things. We had a variety of topics that we talked about today. But what's that one perspective that you want me and the rest of our viewers to keep in mind, and something that we can immediately take action on?
shut up and listen.
Awesome.
can't
Awesome.
get much can't get much clearer than that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Rick. I
Oh, it's
am
been
so
great.
amazed at your level of humility, because it's funny that you talked about it, because I know a lot of older people and they say it's harder to teach old dogs new tricks because they feel that they know everything. And like you mentioned, you're meeting a lot of people in their 20s and they feel as though that they know everything, but it's actually not the case, because a lot of things are evolving. And that's why I feel that I'm just talking to somebody my age when I was talking to you.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but I only know a little speck of the knowledge of the universe. There's so much out there that I don't know, that we don't know. You cannot learn it all.
Yeah,
Not in this lifetime. But
yeah.
that shouldn't stop you from trying. So
Thank you so much. And your motivation and your enthusiasm is infectious. It's
well,
gonna stay
thank
with
you,
you for the whole day. Thank you so much for it. It's very inspiring. And I know I'm gonna have a great day because there's just so much positive energy that I
thank
imbibed
you,
for you this morning.
thank
You're
you. Well,
welcome.
pick up that free gift and stay motivated and check out Indigo Elephant Gifts. So it's been great talking to you, and hey, we can do this again sometime. This was fun.
Yeah, sure. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'll see you again soon, Dr.
All
Rick.
right, Reverend Reg, you have a great day. Be blessed and inner peace
Awesome.
to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Satnam, everyone. It's such a fantastic thing to have Dr. Rick on the show. I always love having highly motivated people, and they're just very open and receptive to learning something new. I think it's a lifelong quality that, we must all have if we want to remain healthy and experience inner peace and continuously experience prosperity from the spiritual and the material plane. And remember to pick one perspective that you feel you resonate with most and take action immediately, because it's action that actually creates the difference. And for me personally, I love that Dr. Rick was saying that shut up and listen is something that's applicable to all of us, especially learning how to listen to the God power and presence within, because it's the one that will direct us to the right people who can become our mentors. Remember to put things in perspective, because your perspective shapes your reality. Mabuhay everyone and have fun.